So obviously, we're also adding on to some of this the next day as well, right? Because there's been a few signings that have happened since day one. The Paul George to the Philadelphia 76ers signing is official, 4 years, 211 million, 208 million. So obviously a big max deal. Also re-signed Tyrese Maxey, right, in restricted free agency to a 5-year max deal. Also re-signed Kelly Oubre. So, with the Sixers right there, they're loading up, right? Obviously, they brought in Paul George, they brought back Oubre, they brought in Drummond, and obviously they're adding Paul George and re-signed Tyrese Maxey as well. So, now that it's kind of official, what are your thoughts, I guess, for that, official signing? Because now we're seeing the Sixers roster kind of take shape. I think there's still a little bit more room to make a couple of additional moves as well, depending on, who's left over in free agency. But, now this is done, right? This is pretty much a wrap where, this ends the Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Clipper era.
Yeah, and it's like, for me, it doesn't change a whole lot. I still think, they're not good enough to beat Boston. However, I think they will be and are better than they were last year, obviously, because you're kind of expecting Embiid's play to carry over from last year. And then obviously adding in a guy like Paul George does actually make you a lot better, exponentially better. Paul George is better than Tobias Harris, so you're kind of expecting them to be better in the regular season. It only just kind of raises more questions for me when it comes to the postseason, because what does Paul George and Joel Embiid look like in the postseason? Do they even play together? Because given the track record and the history, we have seen, Paul George miss entire series and miss the entire postseason at times because of his health and durability and things like that. And both these guys are kind of known to disappear in the playoffs. But like I said, no problem for the regular season. And, you got the top free agent in the class that was, expected to be moving on from a team. So I think it's a W for Philly.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're Philly, you have to do this, right? Because, it's a guy that's coming there. Like you said, he's, of the guys changing teams, he'd be the best one on the market.
Yep.
And it makes you better, right? Does this, I guess you could say this would push them over Milwaukee, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I think I'm more of a believer in what Philly has going on more so than Milwaukee, just because I think this is a more concrete identity.
Yeah, especially considering Milwaukee hasn't really done anything other than, I guess, they signed DeLon Wright.
Right.
I guess maybe as a Patrick Beverley replacement, but they would need to do more. Obviously, we've heard a lot of rumors about Milwaukee looking to probably change the shape of its roster, but we're still kind of waiting, and that would come more so through trades, not necessarily free agency. We also had the Isaiah Hartenstein to Oklahoma City signing right now. That's official. Going in there for 3 years, $87 million. Front-loaded deal, so the first year of the deal is about $29 million, right? The last year of the deal is also non-guaranteed, so it sounds like it's a lot of money, but in the long run, it really isn't as bad as it looks. And, again, that's a guy where he plays a position of need that they didn't really have a lot of, right? A guy that doesn't mind playing physical and battling with other centers, right? He battled with Joel Embiid last year. Really good rebounder, good passer, and a skill guy too, right? Not necessarily a shooter, right? But he's got good touch, around the basket. He's got the floater as well. So it's a big signing for Oklahoma City, and it feels like, considering what has happened with, Denver, where they lose KCP. Not that Denver still wouldn't be good, but now does this make you move Oklahoma City, to the top of the Western Conference, in addition to them adding Alex Caruso as well? Oh. And also kind of assuming that the young players will get better.
Big time. I mean, I'm expecting, Shea. I think he's not necessarily at his peak, but he's already as good as you can really ask for. I'm expecting J-Dub to get better. I'm expecting Chet to get better. You add in a bunch of size. And we already talked about this earlier in the episode, in terms of what Hartenstein does bring to Oklahoma City. But now that it's official, it kind of just makes you feel like Oklahoma City should be the favorites going into the Western Conference next season. And like you said, alongside bringing in Caruso, now you have an elite defensive starting lineup. Like, they were already very good on defense before, but kind of just sharpening out and rounding out the edges where it's no longer Josh Giddey on defense. Now you have Caruso alongside Lou Dort, Hartenstein obviously there to grab boards. So it seems like their identity has kind of been fully shapen or, sharpened and stuff like that. So, I think this is awesome for Oklahoma City. And then obviously, 2 years later, Topic will also be playing as well, potentially. So I think, they're a lock for probably the number one seed once again.
Yeah, especially because, again, their guys are pretty durable, and you expect all of them to be better. And like you said, and I've said, they've added some key pieces as well. So, yeah, again, say like Denver, what's next for them, right? Because obviously, like, they're not going to be bad, right? They're still going to be able to win a lot of games, but losing KCP does hurt. And now you're kind of expecting one of the young guys possibly to be elevated. I know there's been some talks about if they kind of dump a couple of guys on the roster, like if they dump like Zeke Naji and maybe somebody else, then they can kind of get the mid level. But then it's like who's left at the mid level exception that is okay with coming to Denver, right? And then, there was also talk about them getting Russell Westbrook, but it almost kind of feels like that they're just kind of stuck right now because it seems like since they've won the title, they've gotten worse, in back-to-back years. Obviously, like it took like a monumental Game 7 collapse for them to lose, to the Timberwolves in Game 7, but, there's nothing that I'm looking at right now that makes me feel like they're going to be better. Maybe they might be healthier, right? So then maybe that will help in and of itself, but I would need to see them do some additional stuff before I would kind of just automatically say, like, yeah, they're a lock. Because, like, they're no longer a lock to be the favorites in the West anymore. Not that they can't win and come out of the West. It's just much more difficult now. Even though, you can kind of move a couple of other teams, below them. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, look at the roster. It's not great. The depth has gotten worse somehow. I didn't think it could really get any worse, but you look at losing KCP, and yeah, it's a key part of your identity. You talked about that a little bit, yes, earlier in the episode as well. But you still have Jokic, you still have Jamal Murray, which I think is going to be a very good and elite duo going into the postseason. It's just what do they look like in the regular season? And say they do match up against kind of like a team that matches up better than them, and it's like, I don't know what they really look like because you don't have a KCP. There's nobody in this class, and there's probably nothing you can do in terms of trading for anybody that would give you kind of a sense of reassurance about losing KCP. So that's where I think it's a lose-lose situation for them. And yeah, they might just take a step back and kind of be banking on Jokic and Jamal Murray to carry them through the postseason, which has happened before, but who knows? We'll see. I feel like KCP was just so integral to everything that they did in their postseason runs that you can't replace him.
Yeah, and again, there's been reporting about that their offer was similar, but I guess if it's similar, then you kind of go to Orlando just because, there's no state income tax, so you can kind of keep more of your money. And it's like he also already has 2 rings, so there's not as much of an incentive for him to just be on a winning team like that's going to win a title. Just get your money at this point.
Yeah.
Another guy that we're kind of waiting on, I guess, DeMar DeRozan, right? There's reports that he's not coming back to the Bulls. But the question is, where does he go? And then in addition to that, how much is he going to be signing for, right? Because, you say you look at the Detroit Pistons, which I guess we can also mention, right? They signed Tobias Harris to a 2-year, $52 million deal, right? So that kind of lowers the amount of remaining cap space that they have, assuming that they also do the Hardaway trade, as well, where that's basically a straight up salary dump. I know Quentin Grimes is in there, but Hardaway makes way more. So where can DeRozan really go at this point? And is it possible he might just be one of those mid-level exception guys? And if so, like, what's the ideal spot for him?
I mean, from what I've heard, the Clippers makes a whole lot of sense considering, but I think
what they've already used it though.
Yeah, Derek Jones Jr. So I don't know where the heck he goes. And honestly, I really don't even think it matters because, I mean, does he push a team into contention? No. I mean, who even has a mid-level exception left at this point?
Right, yeah. Some teams, in order to get it, would need to free up some space.
Yeah, and, like, who would be willing to do that for DeMar DeRozan? Like, do you have any names? Because me personally, I don't. I don't know where he goes.
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought he was a lock for the Clippers, but they decided to go Derek Jones Jr. Nothing wrong with that, but,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there haven't really been, like, a lot of, rumors about him other than, I guess, that we just know that he's leaving the Bulls, right? But like there haven't really been a whole lot of discussions about where he's going to go.
Yeah.
But what do you think of the Tobias Harris signing for Detroit?
I mean, like we said yesterday, when he was official or unofficially a free agent. Yeah, we said Detroit would throw him a bag. He was going to take it, and he's going to be able to play there and play with no expectations. Because I mean, the only expectation Detroit probably has is just be better than last year, which isn't hard, considering the fact that you just drafted Ron Holland. You also got Tobias Harris, so they're stacking up on talents. I'm expecting them to not necessarily be exponentially better, but significantly better than last year.
Right. Yeah, and then again, we're still, waiting on some other guys that could be possible mid-level guys. We don't have to go into that, right? But like, again, guys like Kyle Anderson. I think Jalen Smith already signed with the Bulls, right? And then, even a guy like a Reggie Bullock. But we're not going to get into all that. But there was a big story that came out right before, we came in and recorded. Actually, two. The first one you had was the Derek White max extension with the Celtics, right? So obviously he signed a 4-year, $126 million extension. So he's going to basically be making $30 million a year. But again, he helped you win a title, so there's not really an issue with that. But then the bigger story is that the Celtics ownership group seems like they are going to be selling the team relatively soon, right? According to them, it says they're going to sell a majority interest in early 2024 or early 2025, with the balance closing in 2028. So, Wick Grousbeck, right, who is the governor of the team right now, he's going to remain there until 2028, but they're going to open the process to selling. I guess the question is, I guess other than if it's a situation where it's selling high, what's the reason behind this one? Because now this is like the second or third, owner that has sold their team or sold their majority share within the last year or so, right? Because you had him, possibly, you have Cuban that did it, right? Jordan did it, and then I think the Bucks person, I think, also did that relatively recently as well, and the Pacers, I think, maybe. So where is this coming from?
I mean, I think it's like, for some teams, when you win a title,
Right.
and you kind of just add to your repertoire and add to the team's history, sometimes you just got to get out of there. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of manpower to run a team. It's a very stressful job, but that's kind of what I think. And then obviously the other half would be, if you suck at owning a team, you probably shouldn't be owning a team. The other guys that you mentioned just were not good owners in terms of what they were doing with their respective franchises. And you kind of look at it, once they sold their franchises, they started kind of going on the up and up in terms of the team and the play and all that stuff and the morale. So I think that's kind of what's going on here. I think this is kind of like a ditch effort and selling high, like you said, coming off a championship. I think their value is going to be, peak.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it'll be interesting to see, who ends up, basically kind of throwing their hat into the ring in regards to who's gonna, buy in. But we don't know, right? We don't have any names, but that could possibly kind of change, obviously, some stuff for Boston eventually, right? Because if you get, let's say you have, a team governor that isn't as interested in just spending money, right? Then that maybe down the line, once they have to make some tougher decisions, that could change some things. But obviously, if you have a really good one, then it doesn't really change anything.
Yeah.